Detroit has a lot of great areas to live, a lot of low crime areas to live, because the majority of the crime can be narrowed down to 3 or 4 zip codes. And when I say the majority, probably 80% of it. And don't get me wrong, even in each zip code, there are going to be pockets of good places to live. Some good zip codes in our bag. 48221, that's probably the number one desirable zip code to live in the entire city. Closely behind it would be 48235, 48227, and 48228. And 48229, most of it. There's some parts in there that you don't want to be in. So those are all West Side zip codes that are good places to invest. There's some good spots in 206 and 204, but it's like any place else. Take a look around where you're considering buying a home and ask yourself, would you live there? On the east side, probably 48224 is the most desirable. It contains 2 of the most desirable subdivisions called Morningside and East English Village. Parts of 48215 down near Jefferson, they're putting up $200,000 value plus homes over there. And some parts of 48213, and then all of your short eastern suburbs, like the Harper Woods now and East Point, those are decent areas as well. Different areas with a couple that are tough to lease in because of either their reputation or their active position as a dangerous area. Zip code 48205 is the one they call 48220 die. However, everything north of basically 7 Mile or East State Fair is pretty decent. And I've got lots of tenants that live over in that area. But there are core areas that aren't. I mean, if that's the only house on the block, there's a reason for it. If there's nothing but abandoned homes or burnt out homes next to the one you're buying, there's a reason for it. So use your good common sense at that particular point in terms of making a decision.
This person needs a lot of help. They're homeless or they are victims of domestic or sexual abuse. What does that process look like for those folks in those situations?
Well, in the Metro Detroit market, and every market has an agency like this, the agency is called CAM. They need to reach out to them and make an application. The fastest way to do that is to find a shelter. Every shelter can register them for CAM if they're a licensed shelter. And at that particular point, they will be contacted by someone from one of those rapid rehousing agencies or permanent supportive housing agencies, and they'll be able to assist them from that standpoint. But those are the ones that are really destitute, and that's what they have to do in order to get immediate assistance. They still have to go through the process, but they have a lot more help because they'll have social work help, psychological help if they need it. They'll have different kinds of people assist them to be able to function in the real world. Whatever these people need to do, they have that type of help available within that organization.
Welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Guys, today I am so excited. You guys have no idea. This guy believed in the podcast when we first started out, when we barely had any listeners. He first came on in January of 2023. So it's been about a year and 3 months now. And I owe so much to this guy because he came on, he shared his wisdom, and most importantly, he gave real tactical advice to people that they can implement every single day. And I'm just so grateful that he believed in the podcast, and I'm so grateful that he's back on today. So this is the guy you want to know. If you want to know about Section 8, if you want to know about the Detroit market, if you want to know those pro tips that you might not have even known might have been issues, this is the episode you want to listen to. So Stu Hicks, welcome back to the show, Stu. How are you doing today, man?
Hey, Kent. Thanks for having me back on. Everything's going great here.
Man, I had so much fun listening to you the first time. And I still remember that story of how you told me how a family invited you into their homes after you helped them get into the house. And it was a story that I literally teared up at. And
right.
That's literally the emotion that I carry with myself every day now. Like, that's the emotional income. That's the feeling of fulfillment, the wholesome feeling that I pursue every single day, and why I keep doing this podcast and why I get to bring on folks like you. So, Stu, thank you so much again for coming back on.
My pleasure. And that's why I do it every single day.
I love it, man. Well, Stu, I know you as the king of Section 8 in Detroit. Man, it's been a year since I talked to you. What's going on in Detroit nowadays? Like, what's going on? How's the rental market going? Is there still a significant amount of demand? What does that look like? Just give us some updates there.
Sure. The market is strong as ever, especially for Section 8. We've seen a slight shift in terms of the types of properties people desire in terms of Section 8 tenants. But as far as the activity, if anything, it's probably increased some. A couple of lulls here and there, but that had more to do with glut of properties on the market. But since the agencies have started issuing new vouchers, it's picked up and it's as robust as ever.
Wow. So I remember you telling me that the wait list in Detroit was it 7 years or something like that?
7 to 10 years, depending on which agency, typically. There are other ways that you can get a Section 8 voucher. There are some agencies that assist with homeless people, people that are victims of domestic violence and things of that nature. They may have to spend a night or two in a shelter, but they can get a voucher at that particular point as long as they meet that agency's qualifications and get a home through a program called Rapid Rehousing, which is a pathway to Section 8.
And Stu, I get a lot of questions sometimes. People ask me like, hey, how can I accelerate the process to get a Section 8 voucher? I know this person needs a lot of help and they're homeless or they are, like you said, victims of domestic or sexual abuse.
Yeah.
What does that process look like for those folks in those situations?
Well, in the Metro Detroit market, and every market has an agency like this, the agency is called CAM. They need to reach out to them and make an application. The fastest way to do that is to find a shelter. Every shelter can register them for CAM if they're a licensed shelter. And at that particular point, they will be contacted by someone from one of those rapid rehousing agencies or permanent supportive housing agencies, and they'll be able to assist them from that standpoint. But those are the ones that are really destitute, and that's what they have to do in order to get immediate assistance.
Got it. And man, how long does that process typically take if they do go through that process?
It could take a few days to a few months, depending on each individual person's circumstances and situation.
Got it. And I'm assuming there has to be an availability of a home for that person, right? Even if they get the vouchers, they still have to go through the typical process.
Yes, they still have to go through the process, but they have a lot more help because they'll have social work help. They'll have psychological help if they need it. They'll have housing help. They'll have different kinds of people assist them to be able to function in the real world, whether it's just going to the store or things of that nature. Whatever these people need to do, they have that type of help available within that organization.
Understand. Well, I like that you gave a quick update on the entire market. When you said that the agencies are starting to issue more vouchers, what does that mean exactly? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. Some of the people who got their vouchers pulled, usually through a lottery of some sort, or all the people that applied that they're now ready to move, well, these vouchers get pulled a couple of times a year. And that creates a new run on the market, so to speak. And then they just reach out through the normal process. Some people go to affordable housing. Some people jump on Facebook and look at different types of groups to see if they can find something they're looking for. Also, these rapid rehousing agencies, they do intakes every month to every other month, and they'll intake up to 30 to 100 people at a time. And when they do so, they're issuing these people vouchers once they go through their process, whatever that may be for that particular agency. And rapid rehousing vouchers are very similar to Section 8 vouchers, might be slightly lower in terms of what they offer, but it does give a deeper pool of tenants to select from for landlords.
Got it. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, what sort of desirability has changed? You said there was a slight shift in desire of properties. Are we talking about more shift towards single family homes or duplexes? What does that mean exactly?
That's exactly what we're talking about. Agencies have been telling tenants that they can get as big a place as their voucher will cover. That's not a lie. That's absolutely true, but it's not based in the reality of the market. The negative aspect of that statement to these tenants is those tenants now spend too much of their voucher time trying to find something that their voucher will not pay for. You got 1-bedroom voucher people looking for 3-bedroom houses. Sorry, you can't get a 3-bedroom house in Detroit that you want to live in. I'm not going to tell you that there's not landlords out there that'll do it. But if you want to live in a property and it's a decent property, you're not going to get it with $1,000 voucher. So number one, part of my job now is re-educating the tenant. The other problem is if a tenant has a 3-bedroom voucher and landlords are constantly buying these 2-family flats or duplexes that have 3 over 3 or 3 by 3, meaning 3 bedrooms over 3 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms next to 3 bedrooms. I just tell these owners now, ask yourself, if you were on Section 8 and you had a 3-bedroom voucher, would you rather live in a property with another tenant or would you rather have a single family home? I tell all my clients, stop buying duplexes that are 3 over 3. Focus on single family homes. You're not doubling your income. What's going to happen is if it sits on the market for too long, you'll probably end up taking a 4-bedroom voucher and giving the whole unit to them. which means you're probably losing, your mind is set on $2,400 to $2,600 thinking 2 units. Now you might get $1,800 for the whole place. It still works, but it becomes a little bit of a disappointment to the owner sometimes. So I tell people, stop disappointing yourself. Invest in things that people want to live in. I'm not saying you can't get them filled. I'm just saying it's a lot more difficult today than it was even this time last year.
And that's such a great example. And that's the expertise you bring, right? And this is why I love bringing you on a podcast, Stu. It's like you have a very real take and a very direct way of telling people, like, just think about it. Why on earth would someone spend their voucher on a duplex when they can get a single family home?
Yeah,
right?
Then they get a voucher. There's only one reason. There are some tenants out there that have exorbitant balances with water departments, so they can't get water in their name. They'll take the flat because water's included.
Oh, that is such a pro tip. If you guys need to really pay attention to this one. Well, you just shared some really, really amazing tips there about just things that people might not think about. What other sort of things have you noticed that out-of-state investors, especially when they look at Detroit, that they don't think about when it comes to investing in Detroit?
Well, let me touch on that a little bit, but with a different twist. Many investors, especially newer investors in any market, but especially in Detroit, the first thing they do is pull up the FMR, or fair market rental rates. And they believe that that is the Bible and the guideline to Section 8 rentals. Couldn't be further from the truth. And they're all getting a rude awakening when they're saying, well, the FMR says this should be 1519. How come they're only giving me 1300? FMRs are guidelines, not rules. The rent could be higher than FMR. The rent could be lower than FMR. Every single tenant is independently different. Every single agency has their own budget and can determine a 3-bedroom voucher is this amount. We have one agency in Detroit gives people a 3-bedroom voucher with $1,200. We have other agencies give them 3-bedroom vouchers at $1,800. It all depends on the city's or the agency's budget as to what they'll allow for. So the biggest thing that's a problem right now is new owners looking up online what an FMR is and thinking that that's exactly what HUD pays. That's not true.
Thank you for going through that. Because, Stu, I analyze deals every single day. And I always tell people, like, hey, when you get this FMR, it could be a rent ceiling. There's different cities that make different adjustments. They can go 120% of that. They can go below that because of the rent reasonableness test, right? They're not going to let you charge way more than other people.
That is correct. I'll give you a great example. I had 2 different tenants. Both are 5-bedroom homes, big vouchers. One, these zip codes bordered one another. They're about 8 blocks apart, but they're 2 different zip codes. In one, I got 1797. In the other one, I got 2279. And the owners knew each other. So the one that got 1700 was mad because the other one got 2200. I leased them both. They're both my clients. I explained to them. It's what the market bears. That's it. It's also the tenant's individual situation. A lot of landlords don't understand. They have to take into consideration the tenant's expenses and what kind of resources they have in order to meet their financial obligations. So there's so much that goes into what the actual rent will be that landlords need to understand that. If they don't like the rent, just tell the agency no and get another tenant. But just understand you're going to surf that thin line and fall off more than you're going to stay on the board.
And Stu, I'm a big fan of teaching people how to fish, right?
Yeah.
So what is your recommendation because of that big difference, right? Literally 8 blocks apart, 5-bedroom homes. There's a big difference of almost $400. That's the difference between a deal and a not a deal.
Sure.
What is your recommendation on, I guess, researching what the rents might actually look like between the zip codes?
You want my real answer?
Oh, for sure. Because this is as real as it gets. We got to be real with people.
For owners, landlords, management companies that are having this problem, the best way to solve it is to call 678-643-4549. Call me. That's going to be the fastest and easiest way for you to get an understanding. You might not like my answer, but it will be the truth.
And that is why Stu's phone continues to get blown up every single time from the other podcasts we have done about a year ago. And he can attest to this. On top of his, how many calls do you get from tenants nowadays? 100, 200 so? What does that look like for you?
My phone rings on the tenant line about 200 to 250 times a day on the business line, which is what I gave out. And if any tenants are listening, the tenant line is 313-643-5307. Please don't call the 678 number. You'll get redirected. In all reality, and your podcast last year was very powerful. I still get calls from that podcast as recently as last week. So I tell people all the time, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to give you the benefit of my understanding and the things that I've done and the things that I've been able to help others do. But I am only going going to give you so much bait to put on the hook while you're fishing, because I can't give you all my secrets and you don't need me.
Well, I tell people all the time, if people DM me all the time, Stu, they're like, hey, what is the best market? I was like, stop. You don't want to Google what's the best market. You want to know which market you have the best team and the people you truly rely on. And I think that's why I bring Stu on, because when people come to me, it's like, hey, I heard bad things about Detroit, or I heard really good things about Detroit. I was like, stop. Just go talk to Stu first, because he's the one with actual experience. He's the one fielding 200 calls a day from tenants. So if you want to be on a team with someone that's close to your customers, which are your residents, this is the guy you want to talk to and get a reality check about what your assumptions are in that area.
And that's really the way to do it, because if you're not from Detroit, you can only build your belief about Detroit from what national news media or people like you may tell you about that market. And I'll be quite frank. When I say people like you, I live in a suburban area of Detroit now, not because I don't want to live in Detroit, but because it's closer to things that I need to have access to, because otherwise Detroit would be where I'd be. It's just not convenient. But there are a lot of people who live outside the city limits in the Metro Detroit market who get their news about Detroit from the media as well. So the only thing I'm going to say is there's a reason that this is the number one market for Section 8 in the country, and it's per capita. And if you do your own research, and you'll find it out yourself, because I'm in other markets and nothing is as robust as Detroit is.
And that is incredible. Well, help me debunk some of the myths about Detroit, Stu. Because like you said, the national media just portrays this as like 2008 when all the auto manufacturers were going out of business and there's bombs going on in every building, blah, 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 blah. Like what? There are bad neighborhoods. I'm sure there are, just like in every major metropolitan. Exactly.
Bad neighborhoods everywhere. And I tell people all the time, if you come to Detroit and somebody tells you the nickname of a neighborhood is Little Vietnam or Little Beirut, then you got no business being there. I'm not in there either. I mean, let your common sense rule on certain things like that. But also as an investor, I wouldn't invest there, because people looking for homes know these areas and they don't want to be there either. So I tell people all the time, when you're researching and looking at different properties that are available, when you see the price and it seems exorbitantly low, you got to ask yourself, why is it exorbitantly low? 99% of the time, the answer will be because it's in a zip code nobody wants to live in. And that's really the simple answer. Detroit has a lot of great areas to live, a lot of low crime areas to live, because the majority of the crime can be narrowed down to 3 or 4 zip codes. And when I say the majority, probably 80% of it. There's a zip code in Detroit called 4820 die. Well, I don't need to be in 4820 die. Yeah.
Okay, let's go through, I guess for the audience sake, right? Let's go through some of the zip codes that they should avoid, or some of the neighborhoods that they should avoid, and then we'll cover some of the more desirable areas. Is how
okay. And don't get me wrong, even in each zip code, there are going to be pockets of good places to live. Mm-hmm. Let's start with a couple that are tough to lease in because of either their reputation or their active position as a dangerous area. Zip code 48205 is the one they call 4820 die. However, everything north of basically 7 Mile or East State Fair is pretty decent. And I've got lots of tenants that live over in that area. But there are core areas that aren't. I mean, if that's the only house on the block, there's a reason for it. If there's nothing but abandoned homes or burnt out homes next to the one you're buying, there's a reason for it. So use your good common sense at that particular point in terms of making a decision. Because I still believe there's no such thing as a bad home. There could be a bad situation surrounding that home that makes it undesirable for an investor. That would be my absolute no-go unless you're above, like I said, 7 Mile. Some good zip codes, and there are plenty more of good zip codes than are bad. 48221, that's probably the number one desirable zip code to live in the entire city. Closely behind it would be 48235, 48227, and 48228, and 48229, most of it. There's some parts in there that you don't want to be in, but most of it is pretty good. So those are all West Side zip codes that are good places to invest, and they're not the only ones. There's some good spots in 206. There's some decent spots in 204, but it's like any place else. Take a look around where you're considering buying a home and ask yourself, would you live there? On the east side, probably 48224 is the most desirable. It contains two of the most desirable subdivisions in the city, let alone the east side, called Morningside and East English Village. Parts of 48215 down near Jefferson are all getting rebuilt, and they're putting up 200,000 plus homes, over $200,000 value plus homes over there. And some parts of 48213 are considered okay. And then all of your short eastern suburbs, like the old East Detroit, which is Harper Woods now, and East Point, those are decent areas as well.
Wow. I really hope the audience just rewinds that piece a little bit, because then you would save Stu probably a 20-minute conversation telling you where to look. But please rewind that section, because I'm not sure how to say this, guys. There's no fluff in this podcast. We're getting right down to business. Yeah. We're giving you exactly what you should be looking for. Stay out of 4820 Die. Stay out of Little Vietnam, right? What's the other neighborhood you said, like, to stay out of? What's
Little Beirut.
Little Beirut. Okay. Stay out of those areas. Just follow the lead of someone that's in the market and that actually understands what's going on. And Stu, I remember you telling me there's so many different Detroit housing agencies.
Yes.
And do they split up by zip code? Like, how are these agencies even organized? How do people even understand or get to understand what's going on?
First of all, most of the municipalities in the county of Wayne and Oakland and Macomb have their own housing agency. That means they're going to issue their own vouchers. Then you have the state, which is MISTA. They issue vouchers. And then you have a multitude of rapid rehousing agencies that all issue vouchers. So there's a multitude of ways that you can get a tenant with a voucher that will pay their rent. But again, the key thing to understand is that they're not all created equally. These agencies issue vouchers based on the budget that they have available to spend. And some cities are smaller, which means their budgets are going to be smaller. They're trying to help as many tenants as they can, but they can only slice that pie so many different ways. So that's really the situation. But yes, there's a lot of agencies that can provide financial assistance as a Section 8 agency or a Section 8 type agency. They're all HUD based and they're all governed under HUD rules and regulations.
Got it. And I'm glad people have you to help them navigate all these different agencies, because I'm sure you have people now, or you have friends in every single agency, and they know how you work and how you screen tenants and everything, right?
Well, kind of what sets us aside is the relationship my company and I have with each of those agencies, from their managers or owners right on down to the inspectors. We know what to expect when an inspector comes, as every inspector is a different person, different personality. I know what they're looking for. Does that mean we're going to pass on the first time each time? No. But it does mean we should never fail a second time. We can read. They give you a list. If you do the list, you'll pass. So
that's so funny.
Well, that's the problem in the marketplace. Everybody wants, I'm not going to say everybody, that's not a fair statement, but there are certain owners, certain property managers, they want to try and shortcut the list. And I say, if you shortcut it, you're going to have problems. My favorite tenant is the one that doesn't call me because there's not a problem. That's my favorite tenant. I have a lot of favorite tenants because I'd rather spend the money in the beginning, get it done right the first time, and let them live comfortably without having to pick up the phone and call me because there's a plumbing issue or a ceiling falling or a handrail that came, whatever the case may be.
I completely agree with you. I always tell folks now the inspection is there to give you almost a peace of mind too, that you know the home is set up correctly, right. It's set up right. And also you might get an annual inspection or a semi-annual inspection.
You do get an annual inspection. You do. And depending on the agency, that annual inspection could be 18 months later. But you do get annual inspections, and that's fine. That's just to help to keep the property in the condition that it needs to be in to make it habitable.
That's exactly right. And well, since we're talking about a little bit about the renovations, Stu, what sort of, I guess standard might be the best word. What sort of standard should investors from out of state try to renovate their property up to attract that sort of favorite tenant that doesn't have that many problems, or to attract a tenant that likes to stay a little bit longer? What sort of advice or wisdom can you share with the audience on that?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is what I call it, and people around me know what I mean when I say this, but my philosophy is called cheap and cheerful. And I stole that from my nephew. I'm not going to take credit for that. You know who you are. That doesn't mean cheap stuff. It means moderate but solid materials. That's what you need, because you can get the look of a $50,000 kitchen, for $5,000. It may not be 50, you're not going to put the top of the line stuff in there, but there's faux subway tile, which is very popular for kitchens and baths these days. You don't actually have to put the real subway tile in. You can put faux. Now, I'm not talking about the contact paper that looks like it, but they have real sheets that you can put up that are durable and water resistant. But things like that, stainless steel sinks, something simple. Countertops, Formica is fine. If you want to make your covering look like granite, make it look like granite. Or if you want to spend a little extra, granite's not all that expensive, and it could make the difference between them leasing your house and the next house. So maybe you put 6% more into your kitchen. Great. That's a good way to go. Bathrooms, you can spruce up a bathroom by getting a unique mirror, maybe one that is backlit, and it has like soft blues or soft greens or something when you turn the light on, so it doesn't startle you at night when you come in to use the bathroom or what have you. There's little things you can do like that to make your dollar go further, make your property more valuable, and make it more desirable than the one down the street when a Section 8 tenant is trying to decide where they want to live. And of course, the outside needs to have the curb appeal that you would want it to have.
And I guess maybe another big question I get from people is, hey, how much do these renovations typically cost? And I was like, you got to take it piece by piece because every home is very different. So let's maybe take down a bathroom remodel to get it to your standard. Like if you had to redo a complete bathroom, like what might that cost you in your market right now, Stu?
If you're talking about from the studs, putting everything in, you're probably talking $3,000 to $5,000 in the moderate range, $7,000 to $9,000 in the above average range. Just depends on who you are. And also decide your budget based on where your property is. You don't want to outprice or try to make your home more valuable than what the intrinsic value of that neighborhood is. You can do nice, you can do solid, you can do working and comfortable without putting top of the line stuff in there because that's what you would do. I get that. My goal is to make the home livable, comfortable, and enjoyable. And at the end of the day, I ask myself, if I have to live here, am I happy living here? And that would be a yes, because A, I'm a guy, I don't need that much, but we're investors, but we're trying to get the most value out of our investment that we can. So the number one way to do that is to renovate properly.
What about like adding bedrooms or finishing basements to convert into bedrooms? Like what might that cost? And do you recommend those type of renovations?
I don't recommend finishing basements. Occasionally you do it because you're going to have to do things like for it to be a true bedroom, you're going to have to create an egress and a whole lot of other stuff out of a window, which can become very, very costly just to add another bedroom to your property. The only time I'm really a big proponent of creating bedrooms in an existing property is if you have rooms that are large enough to add a wall, add a window, and add a closet, and still have at least 10 by 10 in that particular room. That doesn't happen very often, but there are some older homes in Detroit where that's quite feasible. I've seen people take dining rooms and turn them into additional bedrooms. That's okay. There's not a lot of folks that have dining rooms these days, especially when you're talking about bungalows or small colonials. So there are some ways to add them. The only advantage to adding them would be if you have a 3-bedroom house that's at least 1,500 square feet to begin with, then you have the space to do it. If you add 1,000 square foot home, you don't have space to do it. And cutting up the rooms and making them 8 by 9, the first thing the tenant's going to say is the rooms are too small.
Yeah, and I tell people that all the time as well, Stu. It's like, don't just add an extra bedroom just to force it in, because you got to think about the mentality of that favorite tenant. They're looking at it very differently, and you want them to stay quite a while.
Absolutely. And you're still going to end up putting a 3-bedroom voucher anyway, because nobody with a 4-bedroom voucher is going to take a property that small.
Well, how about for carpet? Do you recommend people getting rid of the carpet and going to LVP or something like that?
It depends on the reasoning. You've got beautiful hardwood floors underneath carpet, and you like that and want to keep it, then take up the carpet, sand it down, polish it, and keep it. Carpeting, it's about 60-40 in terms of whether tenants want carpeting or not, and 60% of them do. It's an expense, and it's a maintenance expense for the owner. But if it gets you a tenant and a good rent, so what? You go ahead and put it in. If your floor has some issues, you definitely need to put it in, because there's not, in Detroit anyway, there's not a huge difference between the cost of installing carpet and the cost of installing a laminate flooring. So you might as well put carpet in because it adds warmth and it adds beauty, more so than the traditional gray laminate plank flooring.
Now, with these renovations, right? typically these properties might be vacant when they're renovating. What I've heard stories from sewer line fixes that cost a lot of money. Do you run into that a lot in your properties that you see? And how much does sewer line replacements typically cost out there?
Yeah, $3,000 to $12,000 depending on what's blocking the sewer line. They'll put a clean out in the back once they do it. So if it ever gets blocked up again, they don't have to replace everything. But there's a lot of trees in Detroit. You know, these trees been there for 50, 60, 100 years. So their root system is very intricate and it's very large. And roots over time will grow right through the old clay piping that was there. And it can even crack and enter PVC if it's been done once, if it's been done before. There's no getting around it in Detroit that is going to be a potential issue. The only thing I can suggest to investors is when you're inspecting a home that you're considering buying, you should probably have a plumber come and run a camera snake through the drain just to see if there's any major blockage that you're going to be dealing with if you decide to buy the home. Because if you don't, within 3 months of a tenant moving in there, they'll probably have a basement back up and they're going to call screaming and hollering because they say, I got feces and urine all backed up in my basement and all of that other stuff. Difficult to get around. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the tenants have a certain expectation of that at this particular point. And I tell all owners, just remember one thing. The problem that arises is never the real issue. How you address it is. If you're in communication with your client or your tenant and you address the issue, especially when it comes to backed up sewers, then they're typically going to be okay because they understand these things can happen and they understand it's not typically a direct result of any negligence on the part of the owner. So deal with it. Do everything you can to mitigate that up front.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like spend a couple $100, get the sewer line scoped so you know exactly what you're dealing with. And if it turns out to be a 12 grand fix, then update your numbers and see if it still works for you, right?
Yeah, or exactly, or just don't buy it because it is going to be 3 to 12 grand typically. It all depends on how bad the blockage is, what the blockage is, and who's doing it.
That's exactly right. And Stu, I guess a couple more items like that I've heard from other people just in terms of renovations. Like how do you keep squatters out of these homes? What sort of tricks do you have or have you learned like that you can share with people?
Well, I have Beast and Gorilla. Literally, those are their nicknames. And they will typically go to a home and politely ask whoever doesn't belong there to leave. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. You need to legally go through the eviction process. I'm not going to tell anybody to have somebody go to the house and just toss somebody out. You're going to have a problem with the police department at that particular point. Or worse, you might have a problem with that particular squatter because they'll come back and destroy your home, try to shoot you, whatever the case may be. There's a reason they're squatting. The next thing that you can try and do is give them cash for keys. Do they deserve it? No. But is your property worth more? And is it a value for you to give them $800, $1,500, whatever it takes for them to leave? Yeah, it's worth it. So those would be the two options. You can politely ask them to go with the police. And here's another important fact. The police in the city of Detroit don't want to put squatters out. But you need to remember as owners, investors, and managers, there are no squatters' rights in Detroit. Police will tell you if they've established residency, there's no squatter rights. And the police are supposed to put them out if you can be there with your deed and prove that they don't belong there. Just contact your neighborhood policing officer for additional help based on the zip code that you happen to be in or the precinct.
Got it. That's a great way. I mean, that could be a very stressful situation. How I feel like you told me a story about things you can do to the windows and stuff like that to prevent people. Like what kind of tricks can you share with the audience to prevent squatters at their properties?
Well, the number one thing to do or to try to protect it is I've started putting signs on the major entry points to homes that are not occupied that we're working on, say no furnace and no tank are installed here. That will drive some people away. There'll be others that think, okay, they're just putting that sign on there to stop me from stealing it. In which case, let me preface all of this with saying the age-old adage that a thief is a thief is a thief. If they want to get in, they're going to get in. If they want to take it, they're going to take it. What we want to stop is the amateurs or the people looking for an easy target. Screwing shut your doors and your gates is a big help. Boarding your windows from the inside and out and screwing them in with multiple screws. You want to make it very difficult for them to take it off. It'll be difficult for you. It'll be pain, but it's better than having your house broken into, having to replace windows, doors, and furnaces and tanks. And the most expensive way to do it is to hire a company that can put steel doors and steel plates over your entry doors and your windows to prevent access. The number one company that does that is called Dogs, DAWGS, if you're interested in that. That's slightly more expensive, and I would only recommend it for the more well-heeled investors.
Wow. How much would that even cost to put in those steel reinforced?
Probably $700 to $1,500.
Okay.
And then I think you pay a monthly rental fee for as long as you need them.
Got it. Well, you think about it, if you're giving cash or keys, $700, $1,500, it's almost.
Yeah. Well, that is, but now you're talking about a squatter and getting them out right away. But you're talking about it could be anywhere from a week to 2 months that you're renovating a house where everything in there is at risk of being stolen.
And that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And Stu, I guess the next question I have for you is, do you recommend having security cameras at your homes, or do you think they're just going to get broken?
No, it's always helpful to put an alarm in the home, one that makes a lot of noise, one that has obvious cameras, and you only need one motion sensor inside the home and the cameras on the outside, maybe one in the front, one in the back, or depending on where your doors are. Some homes don't have back doors, but I would do that and just place the cameras up high enough. They even have some cameras now that as you approach the house, very loudly, it says, "Smile, you're being recorded." So people can look into that one too. That's pretty cool. I didn't think about that until I walked up to one of my houses and the neighbor had one on there and it said it to me.
And I think these are all great tactical tips that people you should consider implementing in your properties, because I was talking to Stu right before we started recording. Sometimes people just think you buy a property and all the magic happens. Like, oh, that's it. You buy a property, money comes through your bank accounts, and that's it. And we just talked through so many issues, from renovations to sewer line scoping to how to prevent squatters from getting into your home. These are all the things that you should think about so that you can become an educated investor yourself before you really enter a market. And you got someone like Stu in every single one of these markets. And I guess the next question I want to have for you is, how are you screening your tenants? And how are you finding your favorite tenants, I guess, is the best question.
So now you want me to give secrets out. Okay.
Just a little bit.
I do use a background company. There are a number of them out there. You find the one you like and the one that provides you with the information you need. One of the best ways to screen them is to go to their homes where they're living now, especially when you need paperwork or whatever the case may be, so you can get an idea of how they're living. That'll give you some insight as to how they're going to treat your property. But other than that, there's not much more you can do other than a background check and potentially going and seeing how they're living to give yourself an idea, because nothing is foolproof. Nothing is guaranteed. I had a tenant who leased from me maybe 4 times over the last 12 years. And I put her in a home of one of my clients, and she had a boyfriend who she called her husband come in. And everything changed with her. She stopped paying her rent. She was destructive on the house. The boyfriend was saying that she got this right and that right and the other right. He's paying nothing. He's just living off of her. And she just went totally the opposite way. So great tenant for the first 3 properties I put her in. She became a nightmare in the 4th one. Finally had to evict her. And it can happen. People can go from bad to good, and people can go from good to bad.
And that's exactly right. And I guess I feel like I remember you shared a statistic with me, but what has been your experience with Section 8 tenants compared to market rate or cash tenants?
It hasn't changed. Cash tenants still destroy homes 4 to 5 times greater than Section 8 tenants do. Number one, a cash tenant doesn't have anything to lose but their security deposit, potentially a suit in small claims court, depending on how litigious the landlord or the owner is. Section 8 tenants run the risk of losing their voucher, which means they lose the revenue that they have in order to have a place to stay. Most of them do take that seriously. So for those out there that are hearing horror stories about Section 8, you got it backwards. The horror stories with cash tenants.
Wow, 4 to 5 times there, Stu? That
4 to
is
5
a
times.
huge difference. And is that based on your experience or a survey, or what is that?
It's based on both. The study that was done in 21 that said that cash tenants, I believe, destroyed properties or had damage greater than $1,000 26% of the time. And Section 8 tenants were 4% of the time.
What a difference, guys.
In my personal experience, that's right about, it was kind of spot on, actually.
This is why we're debunking the myths.
Yeah, that's why I don't do cash tenants anymore. Sorry, cash folks, but My business is Section 8.
And I loved how you spoke earlier, Stu, about you don't believe that there's a bad home, but there might be a bad situation around it. I think you said
Correct.
it perfectly there.
Correct.
Can you also help me debunk some of the myths that sometimes Section 8 tenants are just full of guns and drugs and drama? Like, help me debunk some of those myths.
Well, guns and drugs is an immediate violation of the Section 8 HUD rules. So I don't run into much, if any, of that at all. Other than unless you count weed, you're going to run into that because it's legal here. I can't tell them not to. I can only ask them not to smoke in my house, and I can charge them a cleaning fee afterwards. As far as in general having the thuggish lifestyle, or however you want to describe it, there's not a whole lot of that I see or hear about in Section 8 in the Detroit market. Because contrary to popular belief on a national or international level, the city is not filled with a whole bunch of gangster, rap, drug dealers trying to be on the come up, or however they put it these days. That's really not what's going on. Even those that are into the rap scene, they're into it trying to make money. They're not into it trying to earn street cred. And those that may be, they're not on Section 8.
And that's exactly right.
8.
And I think that's where you really have to think about as an investor, right? Why would someone want to risk their voucher when they've been on a wait list for 7 to 10 years?
Not to mention the fact, if I got an agency paying $1,500 a month to somebody for give me a nice place to live, why would I jeopardize that? Now, some people will say, why would people do anything? And I tell them, you're absolutely right. Nothing is 100% guaranteed. But you know what? There wouldn't be so many investors flocking to Detroit if there wasn't a reason for it. The reason is it's a very profitable market. It's a market that has natural turnover, not forced turnover. And what I mean by that is tenants tend to leave if they're being treated very, very well. They tend to stay until a life circumstance causes them to leave, such as they had more children and need a bigger place, or all their children moved out and they got to downsize. That's really what you see more in our market than house jumping, so to speak. The only people that jump houses is because the landlords that they're with didn't take care of the property.
And how long do your clients typically stay in your properties?
Single family homes, an average of about 2.75 years, I'd say. In apartments or multifamily dwellings, apartments tend to run a little longer, maybe 3.5 years. Flats tend to be 1 year, 1.5 years. Well, usually when a flat, if you got 2 people or 4 people, it could be a 4-family flat, there's going to be potentially some tension between one of those 2 tenants. That happens when an owner doesn't know what they're looking for and will just take any voucher. When I have properties like that, I'm looking for similar people in similar circumstances and similar personalities, because there's a greater likelihood they'll get along as neighbors. If I have 2 women in a 4-family flat, I'm not putting 2 men in the other 2 units. I'm going to wait until I can get 2 additional women for whatever reason. Now, I know women can have their own drama, but we don't want to introduce men into the situation.
Got it. And do you think working clients, working tenants typically are better tenants, like because they are working, they're getting out of the house, they're not just sitting at home doing nothing? What are your thoughts there? Any sort of experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think working tenants are better than non-working tenants. Everything is still based in mentality and maturity, because you can have some very immature working people and you can have some very mature non-working people. What I look is how people go about handling their circumstances, their situation, and their business. And I tend to gravitate more towards those who, A, have a good comprehension and grasp of the English language. And what I mean by that is they can understand and comprehend what you're saying. It doesn't matter to me whether it's English, Spanish, Portuguese, Farsi, whatever you speak in this marketplace. But understanding and comprehension of what the expectations are of the landlord is what's most important to me.
That's interesting. Maybe share a story about a family or someone you've helped, because I like to emphasize with people, and I truly believe that people that are listening to this podcast right now, they have the heart to want to help people, right? And I truly believe housing is probably the most important factor and the most foundational to the success of any family. So with your experience, like, can you share some of the stories of the families you've been able to impact because of Section 8 and what it has done for them?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's lots of them. In fact, I have one that took place this year. She sent me an email thanking me. I had probably gotten her 3 places over the last 8 to 10 years, but she thanked me for how I worked with her, how I helped her to gain a better understanding and get a solid foothold, because she had moved here from Louisiana, I believe, when she first came up. She officially gave up her Section 8. She's finished school. She is now an ER nurse in one of the major hospitals, making $95,000 a year and no longer needs Section 8. But she says that it just wouldn't happen if she didn't have assistance, which allowed her to go to school and keep her kids where she needed her kids to be, safe, in good schools, in good areas, because I was able to get her homes in areas that had a pretty good school system. So she had assistance. She had a network of support that allowed her to achieve her life goal. So things like that make me feel pretty good. And the other thing is, I didn't know people still sent Christmas cards, but I got maybe 130 Christmas cards this past season. Half of them, I didn't know who they came from. I had to sit down and go through and figure out. Some of them said, thanks for the home, thanks for helping here, blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. But to have that many come to my office, that was pretty eye-opening to a degree, to at least let me know that we're doing something right for some people.
Stu, that is such a great story. Oh my God, Stu. That's so heartwarming to get 130 Christmas cards. Like, come on, man, you're making a real difference. That's amazing.
Well, you stop and think about it. And how many people would you think on Section 8 are going to go to the store and get some Christmas cards? They're worried about how to get the next action figure for the little boy or the next doll for the little girl, if they still do those things. Definitely a game for the PlayStation, though.
Stu, I'm just so thankful I have you in my life, and the story of the woman you just helped become an ER nurse. I mean, I was an EMT and I made $13 an hour, and I realized how on earth am I going to live in a good area on $13 an hour, and did that for 5 years while I was in college. And I realized that who's there to help the helpers, or the people with the good hearts, or the people that want to strive to make the world better and be a positive contributor to society.
There you go.
And you have done that with 250 calls every single day. The amount of impact you have made is tremendous, man. I really look up to you, and I truly admire your work, Stu.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's fun work. I've been able to incorporate family members into the business so that when I'm done, there's somebody who can carry it on.
Well, Stu, this is the question I ask everybody now on the podcast. And the question is, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, is so hard to solve for?
Well, there's 2 reasons. Investors who are in it for the wrong reason, and management companies that are overwhelmed and don't admit it. That creates more problems than not in the affordable housing space. It's interesting in working with a multitude of different management companies, their styles and how they do things. That's probably the easiest situation to correct, because the biggest challenge that I've seen is many management companies just don't know how to vet Section 8 tenants properly. They know how to vet cash tenants properly. And those are 2 entirely different animals at opposite ends of the spectrum, and they should not be treated the same because they're far from being the same. From an investor standpoint, you have a lot of investors who come to the market and their mindset is, I need to make this bigger or better or more so I can get bigger rent. A great example, I'm going to go back to these multifamilies. I have some clients who have purchased 2-family flats, and they might make 1 flat 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms or convert the attic. Why? Because they're thinking that they're going to get $1,600 for the 4-bed downstairs and $2,000 for the 4 or 5-bed upstairs, neither of which is true. And if you're not entering the market, yes, this is a business to make money. And I want everybody who comes in here to be successful, but you have to be smart about it and understand the market. The other thing that makes the affordable housing aspect more difficult is if you hire somebody like me, you got to let me do what I do. There's no way you're going to learn in a few weeks things I've been doing for years. And if you've got to have that much control, I'm not your guy, because I'm not here to take control of your project. I'm here to accomplish what you are trying to do, which is get a tenant for your property. But you can't reach in and grab this part here and grab that part here. And I'm out of the loop, so to speak, because I do have some situations where I'll have owners say, well, I need you to send me all the paperwork. No, you really don't, because you don't know what to do with it yet. The only paperwork you really need is the contract that tells you how much you're going to be paid. Now, why would I say that? I say that because there's only 2 reasons to need it. Number one is so you can jump in the mix because you don't trust me. And if you don't trust me, don't hire me. Or the other reason is you truly don't understand how the circumstances and situation works. Or maybe you hired somebody who says they can do all of this. Well, if they can do all of it, then don't take my beginning work and then screw it up and make my job harder. I have a situation going right now where I have a tenant calling me. I have no clue as to what's going on in the process because the owner jumped in and circumvented the inspectors and the inspections. And I said, if the tenant leaves you, the tenant leaves you, and I just won't be doing business with you again because that's not the way to do it. And it's not how I operate. It's not what my contract says. So the only thing I tell people is I'm very upfront with you. I tell you exactly what's going to happen from beginning to end. I tell you what I'll be responsible for, what I'm not responsible for. It's in black and white. All I ask is that you follow that criteria. Does that mean I'm going to get you a tenant in 3 days? No, it could take 3 months. In this market, it just depends on what you have, and it depends on what tenant is available that wants that property. Because the number one thing I'll tell everybody out there listening, if you hire me, please don't ask me how long it's going to take to fill your house. I do not have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you that. I can give you some averages as to what properties your type and size have taken, and we can go from there. But again, I'm always going to be upfront. I tell people all the time, you might not like what I say, but what I say is what really is. So you can govern yourselves accordingly.
Stu, I love that. I love that this is a no BS type of relationship because you need someone, especially if you're new. What are you thinking? You might get a new investor. And I tell people all the time, if you're going to underwrite this property, please underwrite with property management or something in place because some people want to save the extra $100 a month to manage their own property. Now, so you have no idea what's going on.
That's true, but that's not a problem if you don't have a whole lot of doors and in fact, I encourage investors that have a small number of properties to manage them themselves, not because they shouldn't pay a management company, but because they should understand how that aspect works. So when they hire a management company, they know whether the management company is doing their job or not. Because there's a problem with management companies in the city of Detroit, and everybody knows it. So I'm not lifting the veil on anything. Everybody knows it. A lot of management companies are either overwhelmed because they don't have enough staff and they charge for everything. So by the time an owner gets their owner's statement, if their rent was $1,300, they might get $350 a month because all the rest is taken in various fees or charges. Could be legitimate, but if it's legitimate, then they didn't rehab it properly to begin with.
And I'm hoping you guys can skip all the steps of trying to manage the property yourself and we'll just work with someone like Stu, to be quite honest with you. That can
happen too. That can happen too.
Because there's a reason I asked Stu all these questions on this podcast is because one, to provide undeniable value to the audience, but two, the amount of knowledge that this guy has shared in less than an hour, use those same answers, but turn them into questions and ask other people, and you'll quickly realize who knows what they're talking about and how do they operate. That's all you have to do. And so you said one more thing, how people screen Section 8 tenants and market rate tenants.
Yeah.
They should screen them differently.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Like, elaborate on that just a little bit more so people can understand that.
The biggest thing they do, which is out of habit and repetition more than anything else, is the first thing they'll ask a Section 8 tenant is, do they have 2.5 to 3 times, does their income support 2.5 to 3 times the rent? It never will. There's a reason they're on Section 8. The other thing is, one of the biggest things that's happening in the market, by the way, is a lot of landlords are waiving security deposits as a way to incentivize people to take their property. And imitation, they say, is the highest form of compliment. But that imitation has led to more than 60% of the properties having no security deposit. First of all, I don't have a problem if you want one or if you don't want one. I personally don't charge them for my own reasons. Number one, Section 8 tenants don't have the resources. There are agencies that will assist, but I'm not going to spend the time telling every tenant where to go. All you have to do is Google security deposit assistant in Detroit and then be diligent going down the list. The other reason I don't is because Section 8 tenants have a tendency to believe that security deposit is actually the same as the 13th month's rent. And if they're a bad tenant, I want them out after 12 months. I don't want them hanging around for a 13th month. I want that 13th month for my team to go in and fix the house and get it ready for a new tenant. So again, when you're screening these tenants, you're not getting valuable information by asking them the same questions that you ask cash tenants. So 2.5 to 3 times, You should already know if they're on Section 8. 99% of the time, the answer is no, they don't have it. The only reason to ask about their income is if you want to be comfortable in knowing that they can pay the utilities. That I don't have a problem with. But that should also be, you'll know that in their paperwork. Section 8 agencies give a utility allowance, and most of the time the tenant will volunteer whether they're working if they have a copay. And there's other ways to find that information out without necessarily demoralizing or creating a detracting situation right from the beginning with your application. The other thing I want to point out too is on the lease side. Section 8 leases really just need to be to the point and cover the things necessary. Because anything you're saying beyond 4 to 7 pages, you're repeating yourself in some way, form, or fashion. And there's a great number of people out here and agencies that have 30, 35 page long leases. I'm like, they are not buying a car. They're not buying a house. They're trying to rent Section 8. There's some basic things that you need in there. You can put some all-encompassing statements together within your lease rather than constantly repeating yourself and creating all of this legal language that you had your attorney draw up that these tenants can't digest, don't even want to read, but occasionally you'll get some that read them. I had one today. I was going to sign a lease. I had to change the date to tomorrow because she wanted to back out because she got tired on page 13 of reading the lease, and she misunderstood half of the stuff that was in the first 13 pages. It happens. And I'm not, use whatever lease you want. I'm just giving you some feedback and some understanding that there's nothing you can say one time that takes 37 pages. If it's 37 pages, you're saying it 2 or 3 or 4 times. You might be rewording it, but you're saying the same thing. That's
Thank you, Stu. Thank you, Stu. I appreciate all of the wisdom, Stu. I want to wrap up by you telling the audience, like, how can people work with you? What sort of services do you offer? How can you help the people that are listening right now that might be interested in investing in Detroit?
Okay. My service, I have a few services. The first one is we will do a pre-inspection for you by walking the house, identifying any areas that we're absolutely certain would be a Section 8 violation, so we can give you the opportunity to correct the issue prior to your initial inspection. Our pre-inspection does not guarantee a pass on the first time. Every inspector is different, and we don't know if they woke up that morning and started the day off bad. Somebody messed with their Cheerios or whatever the case may be. But we can tell you to put you a lot closer. We'll make certain that your outlets are grounded or that they're correct. We'll make sure you have enough outlets in the room. We'll make sure that you have GFIs where you should have them. We'll make certain that based on the agency, you have smoke detectors in the right location, carbon monoxide detectors in the right location. Make certain that if you don't have a porch railing, it meets the criteria for the height where you have to have one. Make certain if you don't have the hand railings where you're supposed to have them, that you do, and various things such as that. That service is $150 for a single family home. And if it's a multifamily, it's $150 for the first door and $100 for each additional door. Our primary service is Section 8 placement. We find the tenants, we vet the tenants, we handle all the Section 8 paperwork, all the interaction with the Section 8 agency, right through the inspection and the signing of the lease. At the end of the lease, they are now turned over to you or your management company for you to continue interacting with them at that point. We will do the background. We will forward you the background information for your approval for that tenant before we submit the documents to the Section 8 agency. My fee for that is typically 1.5 times the rent. But if you're listening to this podcast, we'll do 1 times the rent, everybody listening to the podcast and coming to us from there. My fee, and let me be clear, is payable immediately after the signing of the lease. It is not conditioned on when you get your Section 8 money. It is not conditioned on security deposits. If you want a security deposit, we will attempt to acquire it. If we can't, we'll let you know, but it is your responsibility, just like collecting the rent is your responsibility. None of our work is contingent on any of that. I just want to be clear, because every single tenant, pretty much, I got to go back over that part with them. And other than that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have along the way. We keep you right in the loop, right where you want to be, so you understand how that process works from A to B all the way to Z. The third service I have is I have a selective property management service that we do offer. That we do on an individual basis based on how you want things done and whether or not that fits the criteria of what we like to do. So we are selective from that standpoint. We're not exclusive by any means. I want to help anyone I can, but it just depends on what you're looking for management, because you can slice up managing properties 1,000 different ways to create what it is that works for that particular company, and I'm very different from that. The number one thing I don't do is be responsible for your Section 8 money. That comes directly to you. I invoice. I do not balance out books for two reasons. Number one, I don't want to create the bandwidth to have to do all that accounting. And number two, I don't like doing 1099s at the end of the year.
And that's how you save your time for those 200 phone calls a day, Stu.
Well,
so you don't have to do the 1099s.
Yeah, I'm still at a point that I'm not 100% hands off on everything. I got to kind of still have my hands in all three prongs. My sons do a great job handling their divisions, but I still have the final say so. And since I'm still fielding all the calls, I can't do everything, but I try to do as much as I can where it's helpful to all parties involved.
And Stu, if people work with you, do they have access to your network of contractors from flooring, kitchen, bathroom models, and everything?
On a case-by-case basis, I need to see the scope of the job because our contractors, they're part of the company. They stay working. It's not my properties. It's some of my clients' properties, but they are available, and we do things on a case-by-case basis. We can handle more than one job at a time. But we do everything on a case-by-case basis. You tell us what you're looking for. We'll go do a scope of work. If it's going to be a week job, a 3-day job, or a 3-month job, you'll know ahead of time. And we probably have a 90% record for coming in under the time frame that we set.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, guys. Hey, I've tried to take as much fear out of the process as possible for everyone that wants to get into the space. And in order for all of us to feel a little bit less fearful, you just got to have someone like Stu in your corner. And this is why I brought this gentleman back on the podcast for the second time in a row, because he really knows what he's talking about. And Stu, I'm just so thankful again that you came back onto the podcast. I'm so grateful that people listening are still reaching out to you, because that shows the tremendous amount of expertise that you demonstrated on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for what you do, because seriously, without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. So thank you so much, Stu.
Kent, you're more than welcome. I appreciate your platform. It's fun to be on with you. One final note, if people would like to reach me, call me directly at 678-643-4549. If I can't answer, you know why, I'm on the phone. Send me a text message and I will respond. You may also email me at brjpmanager@gmail.com. Phonetically, that's Brian Robert James Peter Manager@gmail.com. So, and I look forward to, I'll answer everybody, and hopefully we might be able to get together and make some wonderful things happen for you and the mission that you have in investing in real estate.
Thank you so much, Stu. And for those folks that want to be part of our community, you can DM me on Instagram at InvestWithKentHe. DM me the word affordable. I'll send you the free Facebook group link so you guys can all join. I'm trying to get Stu on there, but that guy is really busy. So I'm just going to, you come into the group. I'm going to direct you to the Stu if you want to invest in Detroit, because he's the guy to know. So Stu, thank you so much, man. I can't wait to have you back on for a three-peat, because I would love to have you back on, man.
Anytime, Ken. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you and what you're trying to do here. And I'm here to help any way I can.
Thank you so much, Stu. I appreciate you so much.